The Hells Angels biker saw the little girl lift a flash drive from a tool locker, and the data inside set his past on fire. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's dive into the story. On a quiet afternoon in a dusty, forgotten garage in a sleepy town, a man named Jake Razor Morrison, a weathered Hells Angels biker, was knee-deep in motorcycle parts and tools. His weathered leather jacket, worn from years of hard rides, rested on a hook in the corner, and the garage was filled with the scent of oil, metal, and gasoline. His sanctuary after years of living on the edge. Jake had spent his life running from the past, constantly looking over his shoulder, never settling, always riding. His patch, a symbol of a brotherhood bound by loyalty and strength, was a double-edged sword, carrying the weight of violent deeds and old debts. The days had turned into weeks, and Jake's world was quiet, the kind of quiet that made him uneasy, as though the calm was just the calm before the storm. As he wiped grease off his hands, his eyes drifted to the back of the garage where an old tool locker sat. Unassuming, forgotten. He was used to the clutter, used to the dust, but today something caught his eye. A small figure, a little girl no older than 10, was near the locker, carefully lifting a small flash drive from one of the drawers. Her movements were slow and deliberate, like she was trying to hide it, trying not to be noticed. Jake's heart skipped a beat. He knew that flash drive. It wasn't just any piece of hardware. That flash drive contained files he thought he'd buried years ago, files from a time he had hoped would never come back to haunt him. His breath hitched in his chest as the little girl, unaware of the danger she had just uncovered, turned and started to walk away. The past was now walking through the door, and Jake was trapped between two worlds, his brotherhood and the innocent little girl holding the key to his darkest secrets. "Hey," he called out, his voice gruff, unrecognizable even to his own ears. The girl froze mid-step, her eyes wide, fear creeping into her features as she turned to face him. Jake could see the hesitation in her eyes, the fear of the unknown. She looked at the flash drive in her hand, then back at him. Jake's stomach churned. He couldn't afford for anyone to know what was on that drive, not even this innocent child. "I'm not going to hurt you," Jake said, his voice softer now, trying to calm the child, trying to show her that not everyone was a threat. But the look in her eyes told him she wasn't convinced. She had already seen something she shouldn't have, something that could change everything. The girl took a step back, clutching the flash drive tightly in her small hand, as if protecting it. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "What's on it? Why does it look so important?" Jake didn't answer right away. He knew that if he told her the truth, if he explained what was really on that drive, there was no going back. The things hidden inside were far more dangerous than the little girl could imagine. Far more dangerous than anything Jake had ever wanted to be involved with again. He took a deep breath, his fingers tightening around a wrench, the familiar weight of it calming his nerves. "It's nothing for you to worry about," he said finally, his tone hardening. But the girl wasn't fooled. She could see the fear in his eyes. She could feel the tension in the room. And for the first time, Jake realized that the thing he had spent his life trying to escape was no longer just his burden to carry. The little girl now held a piece of his past, one that could very well destroy everything he had worked so hard to leave behind. "Please," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Tell me what's going on." The weight of her words hung in the air, and Jake knew he couldn't run from this anymore. The past was no longer something he could outrun. He had to face it now, whether he was ready or not. "I can't say anything right now." Jake had never been one to share his past, not even with his closest brothers in the Hells Angels. But the little girl standing in front of him, holding a flash drive that contained the darkest chapter of his life, made it feel like his walls were about to crumble. He could see the curiosity in her eyes, the confusion, and the growing suspicion. She wasn't afraid of him, not in the way most people would be. There was a certain innocence about her, but also an intensity, a sharpness that belied her age. She had no idea what she had just uncovered, but Jake knew it could change everything. The past he had buried under layers of alcohol, violence, and miles of road was staring back at him, and there was nowhere to run. His hand gripped the wrench so tightly that his knuckles turned white. He wanted to scream, to throw something, to destroy the damn flash drive and forget it all. But that wasn't possible anymore. It was too late. The little girl was already involved. "Please, just tell me what's going on," she said again, her voice trembling but insistent. Jake let out a long, ragged breath and finally dropped the wrench on the workbench. He rubbed his face with his hands, the weight of years of secrets pressing down on him. This wasn't the kind of life he wanted to drag a child into, but she had already stepped into it. There was no going back. It's not something you should have found," he muttered, turning his back to her, as if the act of facing away could somehow help him avoid the inevitable confrontation. "You don't know what's on that drive. You have no idea what it means." The girl didn't say anything for a moment, and Jake could feel her eyes on his back. He could feel her thinking, trying to piece together the puzzle. "Then tell me. Please," she said, softer this time. He turned around slowly, meeting her gaze for the first time since she had found the drive. He could see the worry in her eyes, but also something else, determination. She wasn't just curious. She wanted to know the truth. And that terrified him. "It's about a time in my life I don't talk about," Jake began, his voice rough, reluctant. He looked down at the workbench, his eyes tracing the lines of an old motorcycle part. "A time I'd rather forget." He paused, unsure of how much to say, but knowing that if he didn't give her something, she would keep asking. "I used to be part of a different kind of world," he said slowly. "A world where people like me didn't ask questions. We just did what we were told. And that drive, what's on it, has information about things I did. Things I wish I never had to." The little girl stared at him for a long time, her face unreadable. She was still clutching the flash drive, but she didn't seem afraid anymore. Instead, there was a new kind of understanding in her eyes, one that Jake couldn't quite explain. "What did you do?" she asked softly. Jake's heart pounded in his chest. He knew what was coming. He knew that if he told her the truth, it would destroy any illusion of safety she had. He'd spent his whole life trying to leave that part of him behind, but it was all coming back now. The violence, the chaos, the betrayal. All of it was sitting right in front of him, held by a little girl who had no idea what she was dealing with. But she deserved to know. She deserved the truth, even if it meant exposing the monster he had been. "I did things for the Hell's Angels," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Things that, well, things that I can never take back. People were hurt. People died. And I was part of it." The words hung heavy in the air, and for a moment, Jake felt like the room was spinning. He had always been able to block it out, to bury it under the weight of the leather jacket, the reputation, the miles of road. But now, there was no escaping it. The little girl didn't flinch. She didn't run. Instead, she just stared at him, her eyes wide, but not with fear. With something else, something Jake couldn't place. "What's on the drive?" she asked again, her voice firm, despite the tremble in it. Jake took a deep breath, and without saying anything more, he reached for the flash drive. His hands shook slightly as he inserted it into the computer. The screen blinked to life, and as the files loaded, Jake's heart raced. This was it. This was the moment when everything could change. The files on the screen were a map of his past, a road he had long since left behind. But there, among the digital files, were names, dates, and records of every deal he had been a part of. This wasn't just about his past. It was about everyone he had ever betrayed, everyone who had ever been hurt by his actions. And that little girl, standing behind him, was about to learn everything. The thought made him sick. "This is why you can't be involved in this," Jake said, turning to face her once more. "This is dangerous. People would kill to get their hands on this information." The girl didn't say anything. She just looked at him, and for a moment, Jake saw something he hadn't seen in a long time. A spark of hope, a glimmer of something good. He realized then that the past wasn't just something to run from. Maybe, just maybe, it was something to face. With her. "I never thought I'd be here again," Jake thought, staring at the screen as the past flashed before his eyes. His hands were shaking as the data loaded, memories coming to the surface like a tidal wave threatening to drown him. The little girl stood behind him, her small figure barely visible in the dim light of the garage, watching intently as the files on the flash drive revealed everything. He could hear her breathing, steady but unsure. She was waiting for him to say something. Jake didn't know where to begin. The names on the screen were familiar, and each one felt like a weight around his neck. He had hoped those days were behind him, buried under years of trying to live a quiet life, far away from the violence of his past. But now it was all coming back. The deals, the betrayals, the lives he had destroyed, all of it was there, stored in digital files. He could hear his heartbeat in his ears, the sound of a man caught between two worlds. The biker who had spent years running from his past was now forced to face it head-on. And the little girl, the innocent child who had stumbled into this world by accident, was now at the center of it all. "You need to understand something," Jake said finally, his voice low and rough. He turned to face her, feeling the weight of the moment settle over him like a suffocating fog. "This is dangerous. This isn't a game. People would kill to get their hands on what's on this drive." The girl looked at him, her eyes wide but unflinching. "I'm not afraid of them," she said, her voice steady, surprisingly strong for someone so young. Jake blinked, stunned for a moment. He had expected fear, confusion, maybe even a sense of disbelief, but not this. Not this quiet confidence. She was staring at him like she already understood, like she had already seen the worst of what the world had to offer. "You should be," Jake muttered under his breath, not sure if he was talking to her or to himself. The truth was, he didn't know what to do anymore. His life had always been about survival, always running, never stopping long enough to think about the consequences. But now, with this girl, with the flash drive, everything had changed. The past wasn't just something he could outrun anymore. "Why are you helping me?" Jake asked, his voice softer now, more vulnerable than he had intended. The girl hesitated for a moment, as if weighing her words carefully. Then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because it's the right thing to do." Jake's chest tightened. The simplicity of her answer hit him harder than anything else. The right thing to do. For years, he had forgotten what that meant. For years, he had buried himself in the Hell's Angels, in violence, in the constant need to prove himself. But here, in this quiet moment with a child who didn't know the first thing about his past, he was reminded of something he had lost long ago, his humanity. "You have no idea what you're getting yourself into," Jake said, the weight of the situation crashing down on him. "I'm not the kind of man you want to be around." The girl shook her head, her eyes never leaving his. "I don't care about what you were. I care about what you are now." Jake was silent for a moment, struck by her words. The past had shaped him, had turned him into a man who thought he had no place in the world. But this little girl, with her quiet courage, was making him question everything he had ever believed. "You don't have to be alone," she said, her voice so quiet that Jake almost didn't hear it. "I'll help you." Jake couldn't speak. He didn't know how to respond. For a moment, he felt something in him stir, something long dormant. It wasn't hope, not exactly. It was something different. Something that made him want to protect her, to keep her safe from everything he had become. But he knew that the danger wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. The people who wanted that flash drive would stop at nothing to get it. They wouldn't care about the innocent child who had found it, or the biker who had tried to leave it all behind. They would come for both of them. And Jake would have to decide whether he was willing to fight for the life he never thought he deserved. The silence in the garage was broken by the sound of a motorcycle engine in the distance. Jake stiffened, his senses immediately on alert. The low rumble of the bike grew louder, and he knew that whoever was out there was closing in. His heart raced, and he turned to the girl. "We need to go? Now." Without another word, he grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the back of the garage where a hidden exit led to an alley. He could hear the sound of tires crunching on gravel, the unmistakable sound of someone looking for them. As they ran, Jake's mind raced. The danger was real now. It wasn't just about the past anymore. It was about survival. And as much as he wanted to protect this little girl, he knew that he couldn't do it alone. The world was coming for them, and they didn't have much time. "Stay close," Jake said, his voice low but urgent. The little girl nodded, her small hand gripping his tightly as they disappeared into the night. "I have to get her out of here." Jake's mind raced as he pulled the little girl through the back exit of the garage. The sounds of approaching motorcycles echoed in the distance, getting closer with every second. He could feel the weight of the flash drive in his pocket, a constant reminder of the dark past he was trying to outrun, but now it was catching up to him, faster than he ever thought possible. The alley behind the garage was dark, the only light coming from the distant street lamps casting long shadows across the cold pavement. Jake could hear the girl's quick footsteps behind him as they ran, her small hand clutched tightly in his. "Stay close," he whispered, barely audible over the sound of their footsteps and the approaching rumble of engines. The girl, despite the danger, didn't hesitate. She was right there, every step in sync with his. They reached the end of the alley, where the street opened up into the small town. The sound of the motorcycles was louder now, and Jake's instincts told him to keep moving. He couldn't let them catch up. The street was eerily quiet for a moment, but Jake knew that silence wouldn't last long. The people after them would tear through the town looking for them, not caring who got in their way. The girl was still breathing heavily, but she didn't speak. Jake knew she was scared, but he couldn't afford to show fear. Not now. Not when they were running for their lives. "This way," Jake muttered, pulling her down a side street that led toward an old gas station. It was the only place he could think of where they might hide. The lights were dim, the station long abandoned. No one would expect them to be there. As they rounded the corner, Jake saw the reflection of the motorcycle headlights in a nearby window. They were close. Too close. "Get inside," he ordered, pushing the door of the old station open with his shoulder. The door creaked as it swung open, revealing a dusty, dimly lit interior. The place hadn't been in use for years, but it still had an old, eerie charm to it. The shelves were empty, and the floors creaked under their weight. Jake could hear the girl's breathing behind him as he scanned the room, his eyes darting toward every exit, every possible hiding spot. They needed to disappear. Fast. "Stay quiet," Jake whispered, leading her toward a dark corner of the station, where an old storage closet stood. The door was ajar, and Jake knew it would be the perfect place to hide. But just as they reached the corner, he froze. The sound of engines had stopped. The motorcycles were parked outside, just on the other side of the wall. Jake could hear their riders talking, their voices low and harsh. They were looking for them. Jake's heart raced. His instincts kicked in, and he knew they didn't have much time before the riders started searching the station. He pulled the girl into the storage closet, closing the door softly behind them. Inside, the smell of old oil and gasoline lingered in the air, a faint reminder of a time long gone. The girl, now pressed against the back wall of the closet, looked up at him with wide eyes. "What do we do now?" she whispered. Jake didn't answer right away. He knew they had to wait. Wait for the right moment. He had been in tight situations before, but this was different. This was about protecting someone who didn't deserve to be dragged into his mess. "We wait," Jake said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "Stay quiet. Don't make a sound." They huddled together in the dark, the only noise the sound of their breaths and the occasional rustle from outside the closet. Jake's mind raced, replaying everything that had led to this moment. The flash drive, the past he had tried to bury, the people who would do anything to get it back. And now, they were here, hunting him down. He couldn't protect the girl forever, but he had to try. He had to keep her safe. The sounds of boots on gravel grew louder as the riders began to move around the station, their voices growing clearer. "They're in here somewhere," one of them said, his voice sharp and cold. Jake's heart pounded in his chest. The girl's small hand gripped his sleeve tighter. He could hear her breathing faster now, her fear rising with every step the riders took closer to the station. Jake's mind worked quickly. He could try to fight his way out, but that would put the girl in danger. No, he needed to think smarter. The garage had been his sanctuary, but this was a new kind of fight. He wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. He was fighting to protect her. As the footsteps neared, Jake held his breath. The riders were right outside. He could feel their presence, the tension hanging in the air like a storm ready to break. The girl's hand was still clutching his, and for the first time in a long time, Jake felt something shift inside him. He wasn't alone anymore. He had someone to fight for. The thought was both terrifying and comforting. Jake's mind was racing. He needed a plan. He needed to keep them hidden just a little longer. But as the voices grew louder, one word flashed in his mind. Escape. They had to get out before it was too late. They had to leave before the past, and the people hunting them down found them first. "I can't let them find us." The thought raced through Jake's mind as he crouched in the dark, holding his breath. Outside the closet, the footsteps were getting closer, the muffled voices of the riders drifting through the walls. His fingers tightened around the girl's small hand, the only thing connecting him to the moment of calm before everything shattered. The night was thick with tension, every creak and groan of the building seeming to echo louder than before. Jake's mind was on fire with possibilities, each one more dangerous than the last. The girl, who had come into his life so unexpectedly, was now tangled in his past, caught in a storm he had never wanted for her. He had to get her out of here. The riders weren't just any bikers. They were part of the same dark world Jake had tried to escape. They were dangerous, and they wouldn't stop until they got what they wanted. The flash drive. The damn flash drive. He could hear the sound of heavy boots scraping against the gravel just outside the station, followed by a few low words exchanged between the men. They were close. Too close. The girl squeezed his hand, and Jake's heart clenched. "Don't worry," he whispered softly, though his voice was shaky. "I'm not going to let them hurt you." The girl didn't speak, but her grip tightened in response, as if she understood the danger in a way her young mind shouldn't have to. Jake felt the weight of her trust, an innocent belief in him that he didn't deserve, but would protect with every ounce of his being. The voices outside grew louder, and the sound of doors creaking open signaled that they were inside the station now. Jake's pulse quickened. The time to act was now. He could feel the urgency pressing on him, urging him to make a move before it was too late. He glanced toward the back of the station. There was a narrow alley that led to the next street, a place he had used to escape before. If they could just get there without being seen, they could disappear into the night. But the riders were getting closer, and Jake knew that hiding wasn't going to work forever. He had to get out, and he had to do it now. "Stay low," he muttered to the girl. "We're going to move fast." With a swift motion, he pushed open the closet door just enough to peek outside. The shadows cast by the streetlights gave him just enough cover, but he could hear the riders moving closer. His heart pounded in his chest as he thought through his options. He could grab the girl and make a run for it, but that would put her in immediate danger. He had to be smart. The alley. The alley was their best shot. It was dark and narrow, and it would take them away from the main road. Jake could feel the weight of the flash drive in his pocket, but it wasn't just the data inside it that made him feel like a target. It was the past that had come crashing back into his life, dragging him back into the world of violence and fear he had fought so hard to leave behind. He glanced at the girl again. She was still clutching his hand, her face pale but determined. Despite everything, she had faith in him, and that was all the motivation he needed. Without another word, Jake pulled her close and moved swiftly toward the back of the station. They made it halfway to the alley when he heard the distinct sound of footsteps behind them. He froze. They had been spotted. Jake's mind raced as he turned to face the girl. "Run!" he shouted, his voice hoarse with urgency. The girl didn't hesitate. She bolted down the alley, her small legs moving fast despite the fear she must have felt. Jake followed closely behind, his eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of the riders. He had to stay ahead, had to keep them both safe. The alley was a maze of old crates and discarded equipment, but Jake didn't slow down. He had to get her to safety. They reached the end of the alley, and Jake's heart sank when he saw the street ahead. It was empty, the perfect place for an ambush. But there was no turning back. They had to move. He grabbed the girl's hand and pulled her toward a nearby parked car, ducking behind it just as the sound of approaching motorcycles grew louder. The riders were right behind them. Jake could feel the pressure mounting. He glanced around, desperate for a way out. And then, like a beacon in the dark, he saw it. A small warehouse at the end of the block. It was old, abandoned, but it could provide the cover they needed. "This way," he whispered, pulling the girl toward the building. They made it to the door just as the first motorcycle roared around the corner. Jake kicked the door open with his boot, the sound of the metal door slamming echoing through the alley. They rushed inside, the darkness swallowing them whole. Jake slammed the door shut behind them, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The silence in the warehouse was deafening. They had made it. But Jake knew they weren't safe yet. The riders would be close, and they would stop at nothing to find them. Jake turned to the girl, his eyes scanning her face for any sign of fear. She looked up at him, her eyes wide but calm. "We're not safe yet," Jake said softly, though he knew she probably already understood that. "But we will be. I won't let them hurt you." The girl nodded, but Jake could see the fear lingering in her eyes. She was scared. They both were. But there was no turning back now. They had crossed a line, and there was no going back to the life they had known. The world they had once tried to leave behind was coming for them. and Jake knew that they had only one choice now, fight. And he was ready. He would do whatever it took to protect her. Whatever it took. I can't stay here. Not for long. Jake's mind raced as he looked around the dimly lit warehouse, feeling the weight of the moment pressing on him. The door was sturdy, but it wouldn't keep them hidden forever. The motorcycles outside were a constant reminder that their time was running out. He had thought that they could slip away, that he could keep the girls safe. But now, with the past breathing down his neck, he knew there was no easy escape. The riders would find them eventually. The flash drive was still in his pocket, and it was like a ticking time bomb, one that could blow up both their lives. He glanced at the girl, who was sitting on a crate in the corner, her eyes wide with uncertainty. She hadn't said much since they'd hidden inside, but Jake could tell she was scared. She was trying to stay brave, but she was just a kid. And here she was, caught in a world she didn't belong in. Jake couldn't help but feel a sense of guilt wash over him. He had pulled her into this mess. She had found the flash drive, and now she was in danger because of it. Because of him. He had to fix this. He had to protect her. He ran a hand through his hair, feeling the tension building in his chest. There was only one thing he could do. He had to take her to the only place where he might be able to find some answers, the old safe house. The one place the Hell's Angels hadn't dared go. He had a friend there, someone who could help him make sense of all this, someone who might have the connections to help them get out of this alive. But getting there wouldn't be easy. The streets were crawling with the very people who wanted to find them. They'd have to slip out of the warehouse unnoticed, and that meant moving fast. "We need to go," Jake said softly, trying not to startle the girl. He walked over to her, crouching down to her level. "Listen, I'm going to get you out of here. But I need you to stay close, okay? Don't make a sound." She nodded, her eyes still wide with fear. Jake could see she was doing her best to stay calm, but he knew it was hard. They were both scared, but there was no time to dwell on that. They had to move. Jake led her toward the back of the warehouse, the only exit he could trust. They had to make it out of the city before the riders could catch up with them. He kept his steps light, moving through the shadows, staying low to the ground. The last thing he needed was to be spotted. He could feel his pulse quickening as they neared the exit, but they were close, just a little farther. As Jake reached for the door, a sudden noise behind him froze him in his tracks. The unmistakable sound of boots on concrete. "Shit," he muttered under his breath. They had found them. He turned to the girl, his heart racing. "Run," he said, his voice sharp with urgency. "Go now." Without hesitation, the girl darted out the door, her feet pounding against the ground as she raced toward the alley. Jake followed, his mind already planning their next move. They couldn't stop. Not yet. They reached the alley, but Jake didn't slow down. He pushed the girl ahead of him, urging her to keep moving, keep running. They had to get to the safe house. They had to get out of the city. But the sound of engines revving in the distance made his blood run cold. The riders weren't far behind. They had to make it out of here before it was too late. Jake turned to look behind them, trying to gauge how far they had come. The motorcycles were getting closer, the riders closing in on them. They were on foot, but Jake knew they couldn't outrun them forever. They needed a plan. Fast. "This way," Jake said, pulling the girl toward an old building at the end of the alley. It was a dead end, but it had an escape route he could use, a hidden passage that led to the sewer system beneath the city. It wasn't pretty, but it was their best shot. He pushed open a door at the back of the building, revealing a dark, narrow hallway. "We can make it through here," Jake said, glancing at the girl. She hesitated for a moment, but nodded, trusting him. They moved quickly, the sound of their footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. Jake could feel the urgency building in his chest. They couldn't stop now. They had to keep moving. They reached the back of the building, where a small grate covered the entrance to the tunnels below. Jake pulled it open with ease, revealing the dark, damp passage that led to the sewer system. It smelled horrible, but it was the quickest way out. The girl took a deep breath and followed him inside. Jake closed the grate behind them, sealing them off from the outside world. The tunnel was dark, and the air was thick, with the smell of decay, but it was their only chance. They had to make it to the other side, to the safe house. They had to keep going. Jake glanced over at the girl, who was walking beside him, her face still pale but determined. She was scared, but she was doing it. She was staying strong. And for the first time in a long time, Jake felt something stir in him, a glimmer of hope. Maybe they could make it out of this. Maybe they could survive. They moved through the dark tunnel, every step bringing them closer to freedom. But they weren't out yet. And Jake knew they couldn't stop until they were safe. I can feel it. The tunnel stretches out in front of them, dark and damp, the air thick with the stench of sewage and decay. But it's their only way out. Jake's mind races as they move through the pitch-black passage, every footstep echoing through the silent darkness. He can't shake the feeling that they're not alone. The quiet sounds of distant water running, the occasional drip from the ceiling, do nothing to calm the growing unease in his chest. The girl, walking a few paces ahead, looks back at him every few seconds. Her face is pale, her eyes wide with fear, but she's holding it together. She's not crying, not panicking. She's trying to be brave, trying to trust him. Jake can feel the weight of that trust, and it only makes him more determined to protect her. He's failed so many people in his life, but not this girl. Not her. Not again. The distant sound of a motorcycle engine breaks the silence. Distant, but unmistakable. Jake's heart skips a beat. They found them. His worst fear is coming true. The riders are closing in, and he knows they won't stop until they get what they want. He grabs the girl's hand and pulls her faster down the tunnel. His mind races, but there's nowhere to hide. No safe place left. They're in the belly of the city, miles of underground tunnels with no way out except forward. There's no turning back now. We can't stop here, Jake mutters, his voice barely a whisper. Keep moving. The girl doesn't speak, but she picks up her pace, her small feet barely making a sound against the concrete floor. Jake's eyes flicker around them, scanning the tunnel for any sign of a way out, but it's just more of the same. Endless, dark passages leading nowhere. They keep moving. The tunnel twists and turns, the walls closing in as they head deeper beneath the city. The air is thick with moisture, the walls dripping with condensation. But Jake's thoughts are elsewhere. He's thinking about the flash drive, the data it holds, the past he spent his life running from. He never thought he'd be back here, back in the world he tried so hard to escape. The girl looks up at him again, and for a moment, their eyes meet. She's scared, but she's not backing down. She's just as determined as he is to survive. Jake nods at her, a small gesture of reassurance, though he knows it doesn't do much to ease the fear in her eyes. They keep moving. The sound of the motorcycles grows louder now, a constant thrum that makes Jake's skin crawl. He knows they're not far behind, and he knows they won't stop. They'll chase them until they find them, until they get what they want. We need to hurry, Jake says, urging the girl to pick up the pace. She nods and picks up her speed, but Jake can see the exhaustion starting to set in. They've been running, hiding, and now they're trapped in the dark. His mind races, and he tries to think of a way out. They need to get to the end of the tunnel, to the other side, where there's a chance of escaping the people hunting them. But the tunnel seems to stretch on forever. Just when Jake starts to lose hope, he sees it. A faint light in the distance. It's small, barely visible, but it's there. The end of the tunnel. They're close. They can make it. Almost there. Jake mutters, barely able to believe it. They push forward, faster now, the light growing brighter with every step. And then, just as they reach the end of the tunnel, they hear it. The unmistakable sound of footsteps behind them, getting closer. The riders are here. They're right on their heels. Hurry, Jake shouts, pulling the girl toward the light. But just as they reach the entrance, they're met with a wall of concrete. The tunnel ends abruptly, and they're trapped. There's nowhere to go. Jake's heart races as he turns back toward the dark passage they just came from. The sound of the motorcycles is deafening now. The riders are getting closer. They have nowhere to run. The girl looks up at him, her eyes wide with fear. What do we do now? She asks, her voice trembling. Jake's mind races as he scans the area, looking for any way out. There's nothing. No escape. Just the dark, endless tunnel behind them and the riders closing in. He can't let them catch them. He won't let her down. We fight, Jake says, his voice low and determined. He looks at the girl, and for the first time in a long time, he feels a sense of purpose. He's not running anymore. Not for her. Not for anyone. He's going to stand and fight. He'll protect her with his life if he has to. The sound of the motorcycles is deafening now, the engines roaring as the riders approach. Jake takes a deep breath and steps forward, ready to face whatever comes next. They have no choice now. They have to fight for their lives. They have to survive. I can't back down now. Jake's chest was pounding, his heart racing as he took in the sight in front of him. The riders were closing in, their motorcycles roaring louder with every passing second. He could hear their tires screeching against the pavement, the sound of engines revving in sync, a constant reminder that they weren't just chasing him. They were hunting him, determined to catch him and take everything he had left. And worse, they were after the girl. His mind was spinning. He had thought he could outrun them. He had hoped he could protect her from this twisted world, but now it was clear there was no escape. This was it. He had to stand and fight. He glanced down at the girl, who was still standing beside him, her face pale, but her expression set with resolve. She wasn't crying. She wasn't panicking. She was holding it together, just like he had taught her. And in that moment, something shifted in him. He wasn't just fighting to survive anymore. He was fighting for her. She was the reason he was still standing. She was the reason he hadn't given up. "Listen," Jake said, his voice low but firm. "We're going to get through this, but you need to do exactly what I say. Stay behind me, stay low, and don't make a sound." The girl nodded, gripping his jacket with trembling hands, her body tense but steady. She was ready, and so was he. Jake turned back toward the riders, who were now pulling up to the end of the alley. He could see the gleam of their headlights reflecting off the wet pavement, their shadows moving in sync with the rumbling engines. They were close. Too close. He had no time to think. He had no time for a plan. But there was one thing he knew for sure. He wasn't going down without a fight. Jake pulled the girl behind a stack of old crates, pushing her into the corner where the shadows were thickest. "Stay here," he whispered urgently. "Do not move." The girl obeyed, crouching down into the darkness, her eyes wide but trusting. Jake turned to face the oncoming riders, his hands already instinctively reaching for the tools he had hidden in his belt. His mind was focused, his muscles tense, ready for action. The riders stopped just a few feet away from where Jake was hiding. He could feel the heat of the engines on his skin, hear the sound of boots hitting the ground as the riders dismounted. He had no weapons, no backup, just his fists, his wits, and the fierce desire to protect the only person who mattered. The riders stood in the alley, scanning the area, their voices low but sharp. "He's here. I can feel it," one of them said. Jake's eyes flicked around, searching for an opening, a weakness. But they were closing in. He was out of time. They had spotted him. Jake took a deep breath, steadying himself. There was no more running. No more hiding. It was time to fight. "Come on." Then, he muttered under his breath. Without warning, Jake sprang into action. He grabbed the nearest bike and shoved it toward the riders, using it as a makeshift barrier. The riders stumbled back, surprised by the sudden attack. It was enough of a distraction to give Jake the upper hand. He moved quickly, using the bike to block the rider's line of sight while he advanced toward the nearest one, landing a heavy punch to his stomach. The man grunted in pain but didn't go down. Jake's adrenaline kicked in, and he followed up with a swift knee to the rider's chest, sending him sprawling onto the ground. The other riders rushed forward, but Jake was ready. He had the upper hand, the element of surprise. He wasn't going down without a fight. Another rider lunged at him with a punch, but Jake sidestepped, grabbing his arm and twisting it behind his back, forcing him to the ground. The fight was brutal, fast, and dirty. Jake knew he couldn't take them all on by himself, but he didn't care. All that mattered was that the girl was safe, that she got out of this alive. The third rider, realizing they were losing ground, reached for his gun. But Jake was quicker. He lunged at the man, knocking the gun from his hand, and in one swift motion, he delivered a hard blow to the rider's jaw, knocking him out cold. Jake stood over the fallen men, his chest heaving with exertion. His muscles burned, his body screamed for relief, but there was no time for that. He had to move. The girl. He turned to check on her, his heart sinking when he saw her still crouching behind the crates, her eyes wide but unafraid. She was waiting for him. She was ready to keep going. Jake's breath slowed as he rushed over to her, helping her to her feet. "We need to go," he said, his voice steady now. "Stay close to me." The girl nodded, her grip on his jacket tight as they moved through the alley and back into the darkness. They weren't out of danger yet. They were never going to be, not with the past chasing them like this. But for the first time in a long time, Jake didn't feel alone. He had a reason to keep fighting. And with the girl by his side, he knew they could survive whatever came next. "I don't know how long we have before they find us," Jake's thoughts raced as he led the girl through the shadowy streets. His heart was pounding in his chest, every muscle tense, but his focus never wavered. The riders were still out there, and even though they had managed to fight them off, Jake knew the danger was far from over. The fight had been a close call, but now they were on the move again, with no clear plan. Just the cold night air and the sound of their footsteps echoing through the empty streets. The flash drive was still burning a hole in his pocket, but it wasn't just about the data anymore. It was about survival. They had to keep moving, keep staying one step ahead. He glanced over at the girl, who was walking beside him, her small hand still tightly clutching his sleeve. Her face was pale, her body exhausted, but there was a fire in her eyes, something that told him she wasn't giving up. Not now, not ever. She was stronger than most adults he'd known. He couldn't help but feel a sense of pride for her, even in the middle of this chaos. He had always lived for himself, always been part of a world where loyalty was bought with blood, but now he was fighting for something else, for her. They had to make it out. They had to escape this madness. "We're almost there," Jake said softly, trying to give her a sense of reassurance. The safe house was only a few more blocks away, a place he'd used before, a place no one would think to look. He had a friend there, someone who owed him a favor, and it was the only shot they had at surviving this. But the city was a maze, full of dangers around every corner. "What if they find us again?" the girl asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jake didn't answer immediately. What could he say? The truth was, he didn't know. They could keep running forever, but eventually, they would be cornered. The world didn't let people like him or her escape. It was a harsh truth, but one he had learned the hard way. "We won't let them," Jake said finally, his voice firm with determination. "I won't let them get you." The girl nodded, though Jake could see the doubt in her eyes. It wasn't easy for her to trust him, but she had no choice. And that made him all the more determined to keep his promise. They passed through another street, the shadows from the buildings stretching long across the pavement. Every step they took felt like they were being watched, even though Jake couldn't hear a thing. He knew they couldn't stop, couldn't afford to get caught in the open. "This is it," Jake said, stopping at a small, unassuming building near the end of the block. It was old, barely visible in the dark, but it was secure. This was the safe house he'd used before, his friend's hideout. The girl looked up at it, uncertain, but Jake could tell she was relieved to finally be somewhere. He pulled her toward the door, quickly unlocking it. The inside was simple, just a few rooms, a dusty couch, and a small kitchen. No frills. It was a place to lay low, and that's exactly what they needed. Jake shut the door behind them, locking it quickly. "We're safe for now," he said, his voice low as he checked the windows, making sure they were secure. The girl sat down on the couch, finally allowing herself to rest. Jake felt the weight of the past few hours hit him all at once. His body ached from the fight, the constant running, the fear. But now, there was a brief moment of peace. "Do you think they'll come for us here?" the girl asked, looking up at him. Jake didn't have an answer. He could feel the tension in his shoulders, the weariness settling in, but he had no time to relax. Not yet. He needed to think, needed to plan their next move. The flash drive was the key to everything, his past, his present, and now, possibly his future. It was the reason they were running, the reason they were both in danger. Jake pulled the flash drive from his pocket and looked at it for a long moment. It was just a small piece of hardware, but it carried the weight of so much. His eyes met the girl's, and for the first time in a long while, he felt vulnerable. "This is the reason we're here," Jake said, holding up the flash drive. "This is what they want." The girl looked at it, then back at Jake, her eyes full of questions. "What's on it?" she asked, her voice soft. Jake sighed, rubbing his face with his hand. "It's a long story," he said. "But the short version is, it holds information about things I've done in the past. Things I never wanted anyone to find out." The girl nodded slowly, digesting his words. Jake could see she didn't fully understand, but she didn't ask any more questions. She wasn't ready for that. They both needed time. "I'll protect you," Jake said, his voice steady. "I'll make sure nothing happens to you." The girl smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. Jake knew she was still scared. He was, too. But for now, they were safe, at least for the moment. He had to keep them both safe. He had to make sure they survived, no matter what came next. But Jake knew it wouldn't be easy. The past was coming back, and it was only a matter of time before it caught up with them. And when it did, they'd have to be ready. I can hear them. Outside, the motorcycles still rumble, their engines cutting through the silence of the night. But inside the small, dimly lit safe house, Jake forces himself to focus. He can't afford to slip. Not now. Not when everything is on the line. He takes a deep breath, steadying himself as he glances at the girl. She's sitting on the couch, her eyes fixed on the flash drive that Jake placed on the table in front of them. The girl doesn't ask any more questions about it, but Jake can see it in her eyes. She wants to know what's on it. She's seen enough to understand that whatever's inside is dangerous. And she's right. Jake picks up the flash drive, the cold plastic feeling almost foreign in his hand. The weight of it is heavier than it seems. This tiny device contains the pieces of his past, the secrets that could destroy him and everything he's tried to build. But right now, the past doesn't matter as much as the girl sitting in front of him. She's all that matters. Jake places the flash drive back down on the table and turns to face the girl, his expression hardening. He knows the next steps are critical. We can't stay here long, Jake says, his voice low and steady. This place isn't as safe as you think. We've got to move soon, before they find us. The girl nods, her expression serious. She's no longer the scared little girl who had no idea what was happening. She's tougher now. She's seen enough to know what they're up against. And Jake knows he can't shield her from the harsh reality of the world they're in. The past will come for them, and they won't stop until they have what they want. The sound of the motorcycles grows louder, the rumble of their engines vibrating the walls of the building. It's like the city itself is holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable confrontation. Jake stands up, moving toward the window. He peers out through the blinds, trying to get a better look at what's coming. His eyes narrow as he sees the flash of headlights in the distance, cutting through the darkness. They're getting closer. He turns back to the girl. Stay low, stay quiet. He orders, his voice sharp. The girl nods again, her small frame instinctively pressing into the shadows. Jake takes a step back, his mind working at full speed. They can't stay here. They have to move. The riders will be here any minute, and when they are, there's no telling how far they'll go to get the flash drive in them. He reaches for his jacket, throwing it on quickly, the leather familiar and comforting against his skin. He grabs his gear, checks his weapons, making sure everything is ready. He can't afford to be unprepared. His past has taught him that. The girl watches him, her eyes never leaving him as if she's waiting for him to make the next move. But Jake knows that he's running out of time. We need to go, Jake says, his voice determined, as he heads for the door. He opens it just enough to peek outside, his eyes scanning the street. The sound of the motorcycles is deafening now, just on the other side of the alley. It's too close. Jake motions for the girl to follow him, and they slip out the back door, into the alleyway, the cold night air hitting them like a slap in the face. Stick close, Jake mutters, pulling her along as they move quickly but quietly down the dark alley. They can't afford to be spotted. Every second feels like an eternity. The alley is narrow, littered with trash and debris, the perfect cover if they move fast enough. Jake leads the way, checking over his shoulder every few steps to make sure the girl is right behind him. The girl doesn't falter. She's with him every step of the way. But the sound of the motorcycles is getting closer. Jake's heart races as they reach the end of the alley, where the street opens up. He stops for a moment, scanning the area. There's a side street just ahead, one that will take them out of sight, if they can get to it in time. Jake's eyes flicker back, toward the alley entrance. The motorcycles are almost there. He grabs the girl's hand and pulls her with him, running toward the side street. They're almost there, almost out of danger. But just as they're about to make it to the corner, a shadow steps into the street. Jake freezes. The figure is tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark jacket, their face hidden in the shadows. Jake's instincts flare. They've been spotted. The rider from earlier, the one who had been leading the group, steps forward, his boots crunching on the pavement. You can't outrun us, Jake, the rider growls, his voice rough and familiar. Jake's blood runs cold. It's not just any rider. It's someone from his past, someone who knows exactly who he is and what he's done. The rider takes a step closer, his eyes narrowing in on the girl. Give us the flash drive, and we'll let you walk away. You won't even have to worry about your little friend here. Jake's muscles tense, his body ready for a fight. He's been here before. He's faced worse. But this time, it's different. This time, there's someone else he has to protect. His hand goes to the gun at his side, but the girl pulls at his sleeve. "Don't," she whispers, her voice trembling. Jake looks down at her. She's scared, but she's also calm. She's ready to face this. He turns his attention back to the rider, his jaw clenched. "Not this time," Jake says quietly, his voice cold. "You're not taking her. You're not taking anything." The tension in the air thickens. The rider smiles, but it's not a smile of triumph. It's one of amusement. "You think you can stop us? You're outnumbered, Jake. You've got no one left to help you." Jake feels the weight of those words sink in, but he doesn't back down. "Not now. Not when it matters most." "I'm not alone," Jake says, his voice steady. "Not anymore. I can feel the weight of the flash drive in my pocket, the cold reminder of everything I've done and everything I've been running from. But there's no running now." The rider stands a few feet away, blocking our only escape route. His smile is a cruel twist. Like he's already won. I can see the glint in his eyes, the kind of look that says he's been through this before, the kind of person who would rather destroy than negotiate. But I can't back down now. Not with her beside me. I turn to the girl, who's standing a little behind me, her face a mixture of fear and determination. She's gripping my jacket, as if she's ready to fight alongside me, even though she's just a kid. I'm supposed to be the protector, but right now, I'm the one who needs protecting. But it's not just about me anymore. I look at her and I know. I have to keep her safe. "Stay behind me," I say quietly, my voice steady, even though my heart is pounding in my chest. She nods, not a word escaping her lips, but I can see the trust in her eyes. She's with me. She's ready to face whatever comes next. The rider steps closer, his boots clicking against the concrete as he moves. "You think you can protect her?" he sneers. "You think you can protect yourself?" I'm not worried about myself. I'm not even worried about the flash drive. I'm worried about her. She's the reason I'm still standing. The reason I've come this far. And I'll be damned if I let anyone hurt her. "Get out of our way," I growl, my hands instinctively reaching for the knife I keep strapped to my waist. The rider laughs, low and mocking. "You really think that's going to stop me?" He reaches for something in his jacket, and my heart skips a beat. I know what's coming. The gun. But just as his hand moves toward his side, I act. I rush forward, slamming my shoulder into his chest, knocking him off balance. The gun clatters to the ground, and I kick it away, sending it skidding into the darkness. The rider stumbles back, surprised by the sudden move. He's not as fast as he thought. He's not as untouchable as he thought. I'm on him in a second, using the element of surprise to my advantage. My fist connects with his jaw, sending him stumbling back, but he doesn't go down. He recovers quickly, drawing a knife of his own. The fight is on. We exchange blows, my fists against his blade. I'm quick, but he's strong and I can feel the burn in my muscles with every move. My mind races, calculating every move, every step. I can't let him get close to the girl. I can't let him win. He swings the knife again, and I dodge, using my arm to block the strike, feeling the sting of it scrape against my skin. The pain is sharp, but I push through it. He's faster than I gave him credit for. I can feel my heart pounding in my chest, my breath coming in sharp, ragged gasps. The girl is watching, but she's not panicking. I've taught her well. She knows what to do in a crisis. And right now, I need to end this. With a quick motion, I grab his wrist, twisting it hard, hearing the satisfying crack of bones as I force the knife from his hand. He yells out in pain, but I don't hesitate. I punch him in the gut, knocking the wind out of him, and then I follow up with an uppercut that sends him crashing to the ground. He's out. For now. I stand over him, breathing heavily, my muscles screaming in protest. But there's no time to rest. I turn back to the girl, who's watching me, her face pale but calm. I walk toward her, my steps slow but steady. She's shaken. I can see it in her eyes, but she doesn't say anything. She just looks at me, as if she knows the fight isn't over. "Are you okay?" I ask, my voice soft, but the tension is still thick in the air. She nods, though her eyes are wide with the aftermath of what just happened. "We need to keep moving," I say, offering her my hand. She takes it without hesitation. "We're not safe yet. I know that. The fight may be over for now, but it's only a matter of time before the others come. I can feel it. I can feel them closing in on us. We've made it this far, but the hard part is just beginning." I look back at the unconscious rider on the ground. He won't be down for long. The rest of his crew will come looking for him. I can't let them find us. Not yet. Not while we still have a chance. Stay close, I say, pulling the girl behind me as we move down the alley, deeper into the shadows. The danger is real, but there's no turning back now. This is the only way forward. We have to keep moving, keep surviving. The past is still chasing us, and I don't know how much longer we can outrun it. But I'll be damned if I let it catch us. I'll do whatever it takes to keep her safe. We're not done yet. I can feel the weight of the situation pressing in on me. Every step we take through the darkened streets feels like it's drawing us closer to danger. The sound of motorcycles still echoes in the distance, a constant reminder that we are not free. I keep my eyes forward, scanning the shadows, my muscles tight with anticipation. I know the moment we stop being careful, we'll be caught. The girl is walking beside me, her hand still gripping mine. She's trying to stay calm, I can tell. But I see the fear in her eyes, the weight of everything that's happened in the last few hours settling in. She's too young for this, too innocent to be dragged into a fight like this. But here she is, running with me, trusting me to get her to safety. And I'll be damned if I let anyone take her from me. I glance down at her. You good? I ask, my voice low. She nods, but I can see the tension in her face. It's only a matter of time before we face more of the riders. I've been through this before, but this time feels different. This time, I have something to protect. The streets are quiet now, but I know it won't last. We're nearing the edge of town, a place I know well, a place where I thought I could hide. But even here, I'm not sure if we'll be safe. The old warehouse we're heading to is a place where people like me go when they need to disappear. I used to trust it, but now I don't know. I don't know if anyone's still there, and I don't know if we'll make it there without being seen. The girl tugs on my arm, snapping me out of my thoughts. What if they find us? She asks, her voice trembling slightly. They will. I say, my voice steady, but I can feel the unease in my gut. But we can't. Stop now. We keep moving, keep ahead of them. And we'll get out of this. I won't let them hurt you. She looks at me, searching my face for the truth in my words. I can see she's scared, but I also see something else. She's starting to believe me. That's what I need right now. I need her to trust me. I'm not sure how long we've been walking, but the night feels endless. The air is cold, and every turn we make feels like we're walking into a trap. But I know the warehouse is close. I can feel it. It's where I've hidden before, when things got too hot. I used to know the streets around here like the back of my hand. But now, everything feels different. Every corner we turn, I expect to see headlights in the distance, the glint of metal, the sound of boots on the ground. We make it to the warehouse, and I pause for a moment, checking the area. No one's around. For now. I open the door, sliding inside quickly, pulling the girl with me. The warehouse is dark, the only light coming from the distant glow of streetlights outside. It smells like old wood and metal, the air thick with dust. It's not much, but it's safe for now. I lock the door behind us, the sound of the metal sliding into place somehow comforting. The girl steps away from me, her eyes scanning the empty space. Are we safe here? She asks quietly. For now, I say, though I don't know how long it will last. I've been on the run too many times to count, but something about this feels different. I don't know if I'm running from my past, or if it's finally caught up to me. Either way, we're trapped in this together. The girl walks further into the warehouse, looking around. What now? She asks, her voice quiet but steady. I watch her, feeling a pang in my chest. I didn't want this life for her. I didn't want her to see the things I've done. I didn't want her to have to live with the consequences of my actions. But here she is, standing beside me, strong and unflinching. She's tougher than anyone I've ever met. We wait, I say, my voice rough. And we figure out our next move. We can't stay here long. I know that's the truth. The riders won't give up. They'll search every inch of this city until they find us. I've seen it before. People like me don't get to run forever. But I'm not going down without a fight. And neither is she. We sit in silence for a while, the weight of the situation sinking in. The girl doesn't say anything, but I can see her mind racing. She's thinking, just like I am, trying to figure out what comes next. The truth is, I don't know. I don't know how we get out of this. I don't know if there's a way out at all. But as long as she's with me, I'll keep fighting. I'll do whatever it takes to keep her safe. You're not alone, I whisper, more to myself than to her. But she hears it, and for the first time in a long time, I feel like I might actually have someone to protect. Someone worth fighting for. She doesn't say anything in response, but she gives me a small, almost imperceptible nod. We're in this together. And whatever happens next, we face it as a team. I know the past is coming for us, and I know the danger is far from over. But for now, we have a brief moment of peace. And I'll take it. I'll hold on to it as long as I can. But it won't last forever. I can feel it. The calm before the storm. The silence in the warehouse is suffocating, broken only by the distant hum of the city outside. Jake stands, his mind still racing, trying to piece together the shattered fragments of his plan. He had hoped for a few moments of peace, but even now, the weight of everything, his past, his mistakes, the girl, presses down on him, relentless. The girl is sitting on the floor, her back against a crate, her eyes distant. She's tired, just like him, but there's something else there too, determination. She's not just surviving anymore. She's learning to fight. Jake turns to her, his gaze softening for a brief moment before he forces himself to stay focused. We can't stay here forever, he mutters to himself, more than to her. But we're not going anywhere until we're sure it's safe. The girl looks up at him, her eyes filled with a quiet resolve. That makes Jake feel like he might actually have a shot at keeping her safe. She's not a little girl anymore. She's become something more, something stronger. And he knows, no matter what happens next, he can't let her down. What's next? She asks, her voice steady, even though the fear is still there, lurking beneath the surface. Jake takes a deep breath. He's been thinking about this for a long time, even though he's never had a real plan. But now, with her here, with the weight of the flash drive still burning in his pocket, he knows what he has to do. We need to get rid of the flash drive, Jake says, the words feeling heavier than they should. It's the only way to make sure we're safe. If they can't get their hands on it, they'll have nothing left to hunt us down for. The girl nods, her face serious. She understands. She might be scared, but she's not backing down. She never has. Jake looks out the warehouse window, the faint glow of the streetlights casting long shadows over the street. It's time to move. He can't keep running, can't hide forever. He's not just fighting for his own survival anymore. He's fighting for her future, for the chance that she can have a life outside of this mess. A life free of the violence, the betrayal, the constant danger that has followed him for years. We need to destroy it, Jake says, his voice hard with finality. The girl looks up at him, but this time, there's no hesitation in her eyes. She stands up, brushing dust off her jeans, ready to follow him wherever this path leads. How? She asks, her voice calm, as if she's already prepared herself for the task. Jake looks around the warehouse. It's filled with old tools, parts, and equipment. There's a small furnace in the corner, long and used but still functional. It's perfect. He walks over to it, checking the fuel supply. It'll burn hot enough to melt the flash drive, erase it completely. No trace left. No way for anyone to find it again. He turns back to the girl. We'll burn it, he says. It's the only way. She doesn't argue. She knows he's right. They both know that this is their only shot. They can't leave any loose ends. Not this time. The girl follows him to the furnace, standing by as Jake carefully places the flash drive on a piece of metal to carry it to the flames. She's quiet, watching him, but Jake can feel the weight of her gaze. It's like she's seeing him for the first time, really seeing him. The man who's carried all these burdens, all these secrets, and has never let anyone in. Until now. He's not sure what happens after this. After the flash drive is gone, after the people hunting them have no more reason to chase them down. But one thing is certain, he won't let them find her. He won't let anyone take her. The furnace door opens with a loud clang, and Jake carefully pushes the flash drive inside. The heat radiates out, and the smell of burning plastic fills the air. He closes the door and steps back, watching as the flames consume the evidence. There's no going back now. The past is gone. The people who came for him, for them, have nothing left to find. It's over. Or at least, it will be soon. Jake turns to the girl, his face set with a hard determination. We're not safe yet, he says, his voice low but steady. We have to get out of here. But this is the start of something better. The girl looks at him, her eyes reflecting the flickering light of the furnace. There's a quiet understanding between them, something unspoken but clear. She nods, just once, but it's enough. Jake grabs his jacket, pulling it on, and turns toward the door. The girl follows him without hesitation. They don't look back. They never do. The road ahead is uncertain, but they're in this together. And no matter what comes, Jake knows one thing. He'll protect her with everything he has. They step into the night, ready to leave the past behind and fight for whatever future they can make. The danger isn't over, but for the first time in a long time, Jake feels like they might have a chance. It's a slim chance, but it's enough to keep him moving forward. For her. For them.